Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. It is December 15th, and that means trade season has begun. Doesn't mean deals are going down today or anything like that, but just things are going to pick up on the trade front, which means it's an exciting time of year for us here on the NBA Front Office Show. I'm Trevor Lane, by the way. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, happy December 15th. Happy trade season. And 'tis the season for the trades, I guess.
Yeah, it is the season here in Orlando. It's only going to be in the 50s and 60s this weekend, which I know everybody else is like, oh, boo-hoo for you. But next weekend, we're going to be in the 30s, which is like, I don't even know how to process this. So, but yeah, it's wintertime, man. Christmas is coming, winter is coming, trade season is here. Well, let's go.
Keith, did I tell you I'm actually going to be in in Orlando this weekend?
No.
I'm going to be for like 12 hours. My wife's company Christmas party is in Orlando. I'm going to fly out for the company Christmas party. We're going to go to that in Orlando. So I'm glad to hear that the weather is going to be nice, at least while I'm
cool.
there. Yeah. Flying in on a red eye and then flying out on the next red eye. So it's going to be a whirlwind, but that's the plan.
Welcome. Enjoy it because it's going to be cold. At least you'll be inside.
That's right. I'm looking forward to it though. It's gonna be fun. But we've got plenty of NBA news to dive into. Let's start with this from Sam Amick of The Athletic. The Lakers now looking likely to hang on to Russell Westbrook. This isn't a surprise to me based on what we've seen so far this season and conversations you and I have been having about how if the Lakers still have to, if the perception of him around the NBA is they still have to pay in order to get someone else to take him, it's probably not worth it because he hasn't been a negative for them off the bench. Now, if you find a bigger deal, you find something for a star or something like that, sure, you still are open to options, but I don't think they should be desperate to get him off the roster the way they may have been over the summer.
Yeah, I think this is also a kind of being honest with themselves, I guess is the best way to put it, where the Lakers are probably saying there's not a Russell Westbrook trade that will make us title contenders. That will definitely make us a for sure top 6 playoff team. And if that doesn't exist, then let's just run with what we have and try to make the best of it. That's not to say they may not make smaller deals, because I think that option is definitely out there. But we've talked it a million times. It's not just about the players. It's not just about the draft picks. It's also about the flexibility you'd sacrifice, because presumably whoever you would get in a Westbrook trade or even a smaller trade, you may be looking at them as being a part of the roster longer term. And then that means you really got to get it right. This is not sometimes you can do like a 1 year, hey, try to get us over the hump in the playoffs. If it doesn't work out, you wipe your hands clean and you move on. That's not where the position the Lakers are in. So yeah, I guess I'm not surprised either. I think for all the reasons that you laid out and the things I just said, it makes sense to me to just kind of hang on to Russ.
If we hopped into the DeLorean and we went back to July and you told me then that Russ was going to stay all the way through the trade deadline, most likely I would be shocked. I would be beyond shocked. But based on the way things have gone since then, I'm not surprised at this point. But you did mention there could be a smaller move. Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn tend to be the names that we hear the most. Patrick Beverley with a $13 million expiring contract. Kendrick Nunn just over $5 million. So that makes sense that if they're going to do a smaller move, those would be the salaries. And it's not even necessarily that those guys haven't produced up to expectations, but it's mostly that, logistically, if you're going to do anything significant and it's not Westbrook, it kind of has to be these guys, doesn't it?
Yeah, because otherwise it's going to be a very minor type of thing. So it's got to be, if not both, at least one of them, probably Beverley, and that's going to be the only kind of way you're going to get there. And I think what's been now interesting, this came from Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports, and I almost said Bleacher Report after his years there.
I've done that a few times too.
Yeah, me too. So he's reporting that if Beverley was traded, one of the rumors that was out there was Beverley and Nunn for Bojan Bogdanovic to the Pistons, and one of the things that has been that Fisher's reporting is if Beverley gets traded to a non-contender, he will seek a buyout. He doesn't, and it makes sense at this point in his career. He doesn't really want to be a part of a rebuild or anything like that. So he would seek a buyout and then look to return to Minnesota, which was he obviously enjoyed his time there. He'd signed the extension with Minnesota. Then it was just, hey, we have a chance to get Rudy Gobert. So off you go in that trade. And I had a couple people ask this morning after this news broke of, Why he can't? Because they traded him. Well, he can because in this case he's already gone to a
He'd be going
third
somewhere
team
else.
because Utah traded him to LA. But in this case, he'd be on to a fourth team even. So or even if the Lakers decided, hey, we're going to buy him out ourselves, which is not going to happen, he could return to Minnesota. It's like you just got to go off to a third team after, and then that kind of closes that loophole of being traded, waived, and then re-signed with the team you're traded from because you went to a third team. So something to keep
forget that he was in Utah.
Yeah. I don't think Patrick Beverley was ever in Utah.
No, physically, no.
Yeah. I don't think he even maybe if he had a layover from Minnesota to LA, maybe the stop was in Salt Lake City and he flew on from there. But yeah, I fully get that. I get people forget that even happened too.
It strikes me as a little bit strange that it's already out there that, hey, this is where he would intend to go. Like, does that strike you as odd that it's already kind of established? Like, here, this is where he would land if he's bought out. Like, does that suggest maybe there's something, something behind the scenes that's already kind of being discussed or something?
Yeah, there's a little bit there to me that says even if he doesn't get bought out, that's probably where he signs next summer or this coming summer when his contract is up. He probably would go back to the Wolves in that case. And then obviously he did well there. He helped, was a big part of lifting them into one of the best seasons they've had in many, many years. And I don't think he ever wanted to get traded, thus signing the extension. So that doesn't really surprise me that him saying I want to go back to Minnesota, that part. But yeah, being this open about it, that to me says maybe there's a little something more happening here that could be a prearranged thing.
Yeah, right. Finish out the Lakers stuff here. The Lakers reportedly are keeping an eye on Zach LaVine. That would be now I'm trying to remember who it was that had this.
This was Jake too.
This was Jake also. There's been a bunch of stuff that's come out over the last 24 hours, but they mentioned that it's more likely that we see a DeRozan Vucevic situation, and that's not even likely at the moment. The Bulls aren't looking to sell off assets currently or sell off players right now. That's not the mode that they're in as of this moment. That may change in the next month or so, but that the Lakers will keep an eye on Zach LaVine. I don't know. Like, I just don't see that happen. It just doesn't seem likely. I'd have to imagine, like, if the Bulls said, okay, everybody, just announced it to the room full of GMs. Let's say they do it at the G League Showcase this weekend. The Bulls go in and they say, hey, everybody, Zach LaVine's available. I would have to imagine that whatever the Lakers' best offer could be, like 10 other teams could beat that if Zach LaVine was really on the market, right? You're muted.
I muted to take a drink and then forgot to mute. Maybe. I'm not sure how many teams are jumping on a Zach LaVine trade.
Okay.
He's obviously got knee issues. If there's any worry at all that those are going to be persistent, that's not something that's going to go away. You have to look at it as, all right, are we trading for a $40 million a year part-time player? And that gets really tricky. So I'm not fully sold that is what the Bulls are not sold. That is the package the Bulls would be able to get is some massive return. You might be looking at it and saying, hey, two of those future firsts from the Lakers, that's actually not too bad.
Okay.
But I do think teams, if there's probably at least one or two teams that could maybe beat the Lakers offer because you would have to send back matching salary. And Chicago would have no real interest in Westbrook. And that's the only way that gets done is if it was Westbrook. So that from that standpoint, I think maybe the offer could get beat. But I don't know. I don't think Zach LaVine's trade value is all that high at the moment.
That's interesting. I wasn't factoring in the knee issues as much as maybe I should have. 27 years old. He's a guy who's averaging 25 and 5 about. I figured this was a guy who should have decent value, but yeah, there is some cause for concern there, I guess, with the long-term salary in addition to the knee issue. So
he hasn't had a great year this year. He's at 43% from the field, 35% from three. It's not a bad season by any means, but just not the kind of year I think the Bulls were hoping he'd have. And now that gets a little tricky.
All right, well, let's talk another potential 3-team trade here. The Jay Crowder saga continues. For a guy who hasn't played a game this year, he's involved in tons of different rumors.
I feel like we've talked about him on like every other show. It feels like.
Do we need a Crowder cannon?
I don't know, man. I don't. Then we might be getting a little far down the line.
What we would have to come up with something.
Yeah, it can't be like a cannon. It would have to be like like those pop guns, right? Remember those things? Like a little flag comes out on the end and says like bang.
I'm picturing like a giant bowl of soup and all the different players that could be traded for Jay Crowder in the soup, and then Crowder in the middle of it, and we'll call it the Crowder Chowder.
Nice, I like it.
Could that work?
Yeah, I like it.
So Crowder, John Collins, and Jared Vanderbilt, potentially a 3-team trade involving the Hawks, the Jazz, and the Phoenix Suns. What do you think about this? Collins would be going to Utah. Crowder would be going to Atlanta.
Collins to Atlanta.
I'm sorry, call it.
Say that again. Crowder to Atlanta, Collins to Utah, Vanderbilt to Phoenix.
There's so many players in this. What do you think about the likelihood that something like that could happen?
Yeah, I think the principal idea is not bad. It needs a little bit of work because there would have to be other players involved just to balance the salaries moving around, since these are R3 over the cap teams. I think there's this misperception that Utah is like sitting on cap space because they moved Gobert and Mitchell. They're really not, because they took back quite a bit of money in those trades. So I do think it is interesting. I think, you know me, 2-team trades are hard enough to figure out. So you start getting a 3 and 4 and, more teams. People constantly put those in our mentions on Twitter and sometimes emailed and those kind of things. I don't even look at them if it's more than 2 teams, but this is the rare 3-teamer where, all right, I could kind of get it for all the teams involved. I could understand the Phoenix part. Very easy. Jared Vanderbilt's a very good player, and you're upgrading over a guy who doesn't play at all. So done. Sold. Do that. Crowder to Atlanta. I don't know.
That's the holdup for me. Like, what does Atlanta have to get to make this worthwhile? Because Collins is just a better player than Jay Crowder right now. So
I think so. Yeah. Unless you're looking at from Atlanta of like, hey, we can get Crowder for the rest of this year, clear Collins contract off our books, and
good point.
Make things a little easier for us to maneuver going forward after this season, maybe. But I don't know. That seems a little odd. Collins to Utah. I get it, right? I think Danny Ainge is kind of in, I'm just collecting stuff mode right now, and we'll see where it goes. And, Ainge has done this in the past where it's when he took a player in and then turned around and flipped that player for more than what he traded for the guy to begin with. So that part wouldn't fully shock me if that's what he did with something like Collins. It's not a super clean fit because him, Markkanen, Olynyk, you're a little light defensively there, but it's fine if you're the Jazz. I really like John Collins, so I would have fun watching that group kind of come together.
Yeah, it would be fun. They are not the only team interested in him. The Indiana Pacers also reportedly interested in John Collins.
I like this one a lot more.
Right. This makes a lot of sense to put him potentially next to Miles Turner. But think about this. We're talking about Utah potentially in buyer mode, and the Pacers potentially in buyer mode. Both of these teams were like locked in. These teams are finally tanking. They've torn everything down. These teams are going to bottom out. They're going to be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes. And now here we're talking about them as potentially landing spots for one of the bigger names right now on the trade market. It's absolutely incredible.
Super easy for the Pacers too, as far as just the mechanisms to make it work, because they're sitting on about 30 million in cap space, so they can just absorb Collins without even having to send salary back. Now they've got a ton of interesting young players on their roster that they could send back Atlanta's way. Probably send them a guard or two, maybe one of their other kind of forward center types, just so Atlanta gets something there. And then draft pick wise, because that'd probably be the real get for the Hawks here, is the Pacers have all their own picks in this draft, barring complete disaster collapses from Boston and Cleveland. They're going to have their 2 picks too. Not great picks, but 2 more picks. They're going to be in the 20s, very likely. Both of those picks probably late 20s for Boston, mid 20s for Cleveland. So not bad, right? You throw one of your own picks, maybe throw those 2 picks and kick the Hawks a interesting younger player or 2, and now you're balancing. Look at a lineup of like Turner, Collins, Hield, Nembhard, Mathurin, like that, or Halliburton, obviously, as the kind of the whole thing that it all centers around. That's really kind of interesting, and that's something you can build with over the next few seasons too.
Yeah. So I think that does make sense as a landing spot for John Collins. Again, not what we would have expected. John Collins is a guy that you and I both like. One of my guys that I just think does not get enough credit for how talented he is, and that's Jakob Poeltl for the San Antonio Spurs. I like him a lot. The Raptors are interested in reacquiring him. What would a trade look like to get the Spurs to part with Poeltl? We've heard already multiple firsts, but this is the time of year when all teams put their asking prices super high. What do you think is a realistic price to get Poeltl to Toronto?
Yeah, my guess is you're probably looking at a single first, because the challenge for the Raptors is then you have to re-sign Poeltl after a deal like that. But if the Spurs are looking for kind of more interesting young assets, well, the Raptors can deliver some of those in the salary match. Again, relatively easy because Poeltl doesn't make any meaningful money. He's at, let me make sure I have this right. Yeah, he's at $9.4 million. So that's super easy to match salary on. So you could do something like, if they wanted to, you could do something like Christian Coloco, because then what do you really need him for if you're bringing in Poeltl? And then you're not going to get Scotty Barnes or OG Anunoby. That's you're dreaming too much there. But you could do something like Precious Achua. Maybe a Chris Boucher could be in a trade. San Antonio was interested in taking a flyer on Malachi Flynn and seeing what he looks like on a team where he would get more playing time. This is similar-ish to what they did a year ago with Derek White. Wasn't the biggest return in terms of players, but they did get a first-round pick out of it. They got a chance to swap. So if you're the Raptors, you're probably going to send a pick, and then the players will be just kind of the ballast to make it match, but you could throw them an interesting kind of team. So, or interesting mix of guys, I guess. And you're absolutely right with Poeltl. A lot of people probably aren't watching the Spurs very much this season because they're winning games right now, but they haven't been very good for most of the year. But they're using him as kind of their offensive hub quite a bit. He's up to I want to say it's at least around 3 assists per game this season, that's interesting to me because that says, we can run some stuff through him this year. Yeah, he's at 3.5 assists per game. Yeah, which is pretty good number if you're not for a big man that isn't like Jokic level, but it's so scoring really well, doing his thing inside, still an elite rim protector and rebounder. So yeah, that's interesting. And this is Masai Ujiri. One of the things that's always like he doesn't like to trade his own guys. Well, it's kind of funny. This is the one he did, and now it's like he's trying to go get him back.
He regrets it.
It might be. I don't know how much he regrets it because he got Kawhi and they won a championship.
True.
But my guess is, it might be a little bit like, hey, if I can get him back, let's look. And if the Spurs don't think Poeltl's going to resign this summer, well, why not? He's not extension eligible because he didn't sign a long enough contract, so he can't extend with San Antonio. But they'll obviously have more than enough flexibility to bring him back if that's what they want to do this summer. So he's going to be interesting. Also, kind of buried in that little nugget from Jake Fisher, Celtics not doing anything on the trade market right now. Not even interested in Poeltl, and they'd been linked to him for a while. But I think Boston's basically looking at it as, hey, we got Rob Williams coming back here eventually, maybe as soon as this weekend, and we're not going to push anything forward right now.
I wonder how much of their interest was while Rob Williams was out, and then Poeltl got injured. He's been out for a few weeks now. I'm just looking at the latest update. He's up to 2-on-2 work at this point, so he'll be back at some point dealing with this bone bruise. But I wonder if that is what kind of torpedoed the Celtics' interest, if they were kind of looking at him as a stopgap before Williams could come back.
I think there was definitely probably some of that for sure.
All right, let's talk about some injuries. Lonzo Ball may not play this season.
Yeah.
Yikes. I mean, we've been targeting January. We've been talking about how he's going to come back, and then the Bulls were going to get a chance to look at what they've really got. I mean, if this is indeed he's out for the season, does that push the Bulls more towards just blowing it up? Or what do you do? Does this matter for Chicago? What do you do?
I think it does matter, and I think you have to somewhat consider it, because part of what then you have to factor in is what's your confidence level you're going to get him back in at the level he was next season.
Yeah.
Right. Because you miss a season and a half, unless you're, Klay Thompson, who has really bounced back, but he's in a very unique ecosystem there and with the Warriors. I don't know, man. That starts to be very worrisome to me. And that's, $40+ million for over $40.5 million over the next 2 seasons after this one that you owe Lonzo. That gets really rough to go with. So you may start looking at it and saying, all right, hey, we're gonna have to work around his contract. But yeah, if we can start moving some of these other guys out, let's do it, and let's kind of hit the reset button here on this team that unfortunately we really only kind of got to see together them for half a season. And it was really good
It was
half a
really good.
season,
Yeah.
and then it all kind of crumbled from there.
Yeah, right now the Chicago Bulls sitting in 11th in the East, 10 games back at first. They're at 11-16 on the season right now, not where they were hoping to be this year. Another big one, Steph Curry will miss a few weeks dealing with a shoulder issue. That's going to be, the Warriors have been making a bit of a push here up in the West, but now they're just sitting in the 10 seed. They're a game below 500. I know the Warriors are a team that doesn't worry that much about the regular season. It's all about the postseason. They're going to make sure he gets fully healthy, but this isn't great time for the Warriors, where now you wonder how the rest of the season is going to play out. If it takes them 3 weeks plus, what does that do to their record by the time Curry comes back? It's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and they weathered that storm last year. He got hurt. He had the foot issue, and they did fine and made it through, and obviously ended up going to the finals. But this is going to be tricky, right? What was that?
They had more depth last season.
Yeah,
Their bench has been a major problem this season, so that's going to be an issue.
And Andrew Wiggins is still out too. So now you're down Curry and Wiggins. Those are 2-year primary offensive creators there. It's going to put a lot on Jordan Poole. You're going to really need Klay Thompson to step up here. And it's a bummer to see Steph go down. And, again, if it's only a few weeks, you're probably okay. But I think the Warriors then have to start thinking, all right, what are our goals? Because if you're out 4 or 5 games out of home court advantage, then it just becomes, all right, we need to just then maybe they go matchup hunting, right? Of like, hey, let's still try to get to 5 or 6 and get in there. Because I don't think you want to deal with the play-in. Because the play-in really, it's the closest thing we have to the NCAA tournament, where the better team can have a bad shooting night, and it can be all over for you. So yeah, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
The Grinch stole Steph versus Ja for Christmas Day.
Yeah, I know. Killer, right? Like, just such a bummer. And it actually was a pretty fun Christmas slate. 76ers Knicks is kind of big, but that was supposed to be like one of the marquee games there, Grizzlies Warriors. So I don't know, that by then I will probably be fully ready for a little bit of a nap and a little bit of recovery time. So we'll see.
All right, last one we've got. This sounds like just incredibly painful. Torn hamstring for Maxi Kleber. Not good for the Mavs. JaVale McGee has not been the answer for them in the middle that they were hoping he would be. And now you've got Kleber is going to be missing time. Are we on Luka watch yet?
Nah, not yet.
Too early, but he's frustrated.
Yeah, there was that report that he said he was going to give him 2 years or whatever it is that somebody had, and then we'll see. So this is a bummer for Dallas. They've got a ton of guys in that front court, but Kleber's like the one I think they feel most. We know what we're going to get out of him. Really good defense. He's a really good rim protector, and I don't think people fully realize that he's probably the if not the best of that front court mix. He's right up there. So yeah, and a torn hamstring. I know we talked about before we started recording. That just sounds horrible. That's why that's why, man, you can't tear fat, right? You don't be in shape, athletes. This is bad. Just be fat. You can't tear fat. Like just go out there and roll with it.
That's the mistake that they made. That was the mistake. Man. Yeah. Oh no, Maxi. Oh well.
Hey, one late one just because it just came across. Clint Capella had a right calf injury during last night's game and has a right calf strain. He'll be out 1 to 2 weeks. So
okay.
Life getting a little harder for the Hawks too. Coming here, so that's a little tricky. And the Nets were just fined $25,000 for failing to comply with league policies governing injury reporting. And I think the Nets did a rest day, and then they kind of threw a whole bunch of injuries out there for a reason why, but they did it far too late. So I think that's really the real story of what happened on that one.
Got it. All right. Well, I think that gets us through just about everything for today.
Rapid fire style.
Rapid fire style. We got through it. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Make sure you are subscribing to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. You can check out our Clips channel as well. I'll put the link in the description. And of course, if you're listening over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, make sure you give us that 5-star rating and review. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.